Number 10. How much of society is built around hatred and envy between the sexes? It's interesting to hear both men and women complain about modern dating. It's kind of funny and depressing at the same time that they both think they have the rotten end of the deal. Guys say they don't get any dates and all the girls they meet are psychos, and girls think that all the guys they meet are flaky fuckboys. They don't meet any good men who actually care about them as people. Which brings me to the question, to what degree is this normal and to what degree is our society doing something massively wrong? I'd like to posit that the tension between the sexes, as manifest in both positive and negative ways, allows the survival and improvement of the human race. For men, the central point is that men are biologically less useful than women, given that a woman's egg is so much more expensive in real terms than a man's sperm, that a single man can impregnate 1,000 women, meaning that those 999 men really don't need to be there. But the value of a woman's egg is stable at basically one child a year. However, men coming from this fundamental insecurity have built up a series of methods to compete with each other and also discount this female advantage, which when added together gives men a massive advantage over women. I once told a female friend that testosterone's like a steam kettle that just keeps on pumping the guy with energy until it gets redirected somewhere or the guy goes insane. This is historically accurate in the societies in which men aren't married at a young age, universally start a shit ton of wars, and have really high crime rates. The brilliant feminist philosopher Camille Paglia once said the reason there isn't a female Mozart is the same that there isn't a female Jack the Ripper, and that testosterone gives men an unforgiving clock in the back of their heads that can either lead them to greatness or evil. The cruelest aspects of toxic masculinity include the Nazis or Imperial Japan, who took aggressive masculinity to an extreme. Alternately, the pathetic machismo of many third world countries in which masculinity involves fighting, drinking, and largely having your wife do the real work and support the kids and put up with your bullshit, thus preventing their societies from growing, or the truly toxic masculinity of enslaving women's personas and sexes for their egos, whether through female genital mutilation, foot binding, keeping women at home all day, or harems. The continuous male drive across history comes from the insecurity of knowing that if things go wrong, they lose the game of life. And weak men turn this into hatred of women. Meanwhile, the female insecurity and envy of men comes from them never building up the competitive advantage men have, given that they just never had to compete as hard. Women don't feel the need to pose as much in the same way as men do to justify their existences. However, at the same time, women feel envy that men built up the main organs of society, whether the military, government, corporations, and religions, as side effects of their competition, thus giving men massive advantages in turning all societies in the human race into patriarchy, and at the same time, the insecure edge men have from the clock in the back of their heads that is testosterone. Women realize that human society is a patriarchy, but don't have the inclination to build any realistic structures that would replace it. Likely since they never had to form teams to hunt or wage war back in the Stone Age. Thus, toxic femininity looks like tearing down the organizations that hold society up while focusing on useless minutiae which gradually kills the society. This can look like social justice, the witch trials, or the stifling collectivism and family controls of China or India, all of which are women using their social pressures to turn society into madness or for raw social control through petty bullshit. Since men have the physical and social advantage, women have learned to be more socially adept and operate through relational warfare, which in some ways is more dangerous than direct combat since it can't be directly defeated. An example of this is the Me Too movement, in which we're at the point where any man's career can be ruined by any woman saying he sexually harassed her with absolutely no evidence, which anyone would realize would be a horrible way to structure a society, but toxic femininity, basically pushing you have to listen to women all the time with no rational argument behind it, is causing the social pressure which will have and is having horrible effects on society. Due to the differences in strength and aggression between the sexes, direct competition between them is extremely difficult to manage, and means that women can get away with being more provocative than men because society doesn't take them as seriously. Let's just use an example of an intellectual debate where a man and a woman are in a rational debate and the woman is being extremely provocative. If the man were to counter her in a direct yet rational way, forcing her to pull out her evidence and digging into each of her individual points to a great depth, if the woman breaks into tears, even if the man is doing what he has to do to prove his point logically, the audience will side with the woman. The female response to being held to aggressive male standards and competition is that those standards are inherently toxic and should be removed, but because women have never been expected to be in the competitive edge of society, they don't understand that those competitive aggressive standards are there, and we put them because if they weren't there, we would all die. The extreme difficulty of coordinating competition between men and women is why basically every society in history, going back to the Stone Age, has structured occupations in a gendered way between men and women, with their own spheres. On top of this, our society has done a poor job of mixing up things that make more sense through a feminine mindset, make more sense with a masculine mindset. In our daily interpersonal lives, the feminine way of managing social relations and being forgiving and emotional works better, while in the modern world we try to over-rationalize and split people into different categories in our daily lives that's very mechanical and depressing. While meanwhile, using feminine forgiveness or lack of competition for stuff like war or business and the like is just a road to social decay and being conquered. At the same time, you do need a balance of both in their own places for a healthy society. What both sexes need is to basically take responsibility for their own problems and love and appreciate the other sex for where they are. A real man knows that women aren't evil and doesn't put them on a pedestal either, but knows that we have to work together with our strengths and weaknesses for the further propagation of the human race. The other sex aren't an amorphous blob, they're people. A good man is able to love women since he can love being a man. However, this is the opposite of what modern society pushes. Healthy relations between the sexes involve each sex knowing who they are while also empathizing with the other sex. What modern society does is to microscope all gender relations, offering no forgiveness for mistakes made, and then trying to create a war between the sexes to upset relations for social change, but fails to ignore that you cannot have war between the sexes since they always need to work together for society to function. War between the sexes, not cooperation and understanding, is a road to insanity for both sexes and the collapse of society, both of which we're seeing now. I consider incels and radical feminists, cat ladies and weebs to be the same symptoms of this social pandemic. Well, I wonder what you folks thought about that video. As always, thanks for watching, stay tuned for future videos, and check out my Patreon and Pearl and Pillar. As always,